Jambo. You say Jambo. Jambo habari yako is Swahili for hello and how are you. What a remarkable day. I'm very excited to be here. I'm also a little bit nervous. And they say that when you're nervous, you should imagine your audience to be naked. So I'm going to close my eyes, and if you would oblige me, just take off your clothes, and when I open them, we'll begin. Excuse me, sir, I was just joking. You can leave. On December 11th, 2006, I died on Mount Kilimanjaro. Let me tell you about the circumstances that led to that fortunate situation. This is a story of love and loss, of death and rebirth. The story actually begins 3 years earlier, when I learned of the tragic death of my ex-partner, my best friend, Tania Trepanier, who died in a bus accident on the streets of Los Angeles. She had just graduated from USC and was about to become a film director. And we had been in a relationship for about 5 years. And for reasons that reason knows not of, we had separated, but we had remained very close. Tania and I had the love that Edgar Allan Poe spoke about. I was a child, and she was a child, down in the kingdom by the sea, and we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabelle Lee. And that experience spun me into a depression that lasted for at least 3 years, and this surprised me because, of course, I'm a young male, I'm immortal, and I'm a psychologist. I don't get depression. I study it. But if you've had depression, and I hope you never do, if you know someone who has, it is a bleak land. It is a place where you dream about not waking up. In fact, waking up is the hell, and sleep is the refuge. And so I found myself in this position. And like the criminal who often returns to the scene of the crime, people who contemplate their endings sometimes return to their beginnings. I was born in Uganda. I returned to East Africa to climb this mountain, to think about my end. And if I was going to end, what better place to do it than where it all began? Day one, Moshi. 4 friends gather. My best friend, Alan, arrived from Ottawa. His girlfriend, a nurse from Ottawa. His best friend from Alberta, and me from Vancouver. In the morning, the sun rose above Kilimanjaro. This mountain is stupidly big. It is 90 kilometers at the base. It is 19,350 feet tall, about 5,900 meters. And it loomed over the small, dusty little town like a tsunami rising from the Serengeti. Kilimanjaro, in Kikuyu, the White Mountain. A few hours later, we found ourselves walking through this landscape, like hobbits leaving the Shire. I look angry there. I'm not angry. I'm hungry. Magnificent trees, tall as cathedral ceilings, moss like beards, birds I've never seen before, monkeys howling from the canopy. Our guides told us elephant dwell here. I did not expect a jungle at the heart of the mountain. But this is Kilimanjaro. It plays with you. It changes your perspective of the world. Mwendo is a wonderful Swahili word. It means a long and contemplative journey. It's longer than a stroll, perhaps not quite as long as a pilgrimage. It's something I recommend. It is a way of disconnecting from the chaos, from the technological buzzes and alarms of our lives, and reconnecting with eternal things. eternal things outside of us and inside of us. And so we began. And what I noticed on that first day is we were very excited, and everyone was pointing at things, and look at this and look at that. And after a few hours, that conversation started to subside, and people started to become quiet. It was a pattern that would repeat itself over the course of the next 7 days. If you're going to go for a Mwendo, I recommend taking shoes and a hat, and if it happens to be on a mountain, then you might need a few other things as well. But you don't actually need a lot. You just need to do something that is very honest, very natural. I like walking. I think at the speed of walking. I enjoy walking with other people because I don't have to look at their face. Many creative artists and scientists and writers have come to the same conclusion. From Darwin to Dickens, from Thoreau to Tchaikovsky, walking has an eminent place in the history of creativity. Something happens. The mind calms, the synapses fire up, and ideas just come to you. Here's a quote from Wendell Berry, remembering, in his novel Remembering. "There comes a longing never to travel again, except on foot. We forget this. Bicycling is too fast. Forget cars and airplanes. Walking is the right speed." On day 3, something interesting happened. The beginnings of altitude sickness started to be perceived by the team. A kind of low-level nausea, a persistent headache, a coldness in the body that doesn't quite ever leave, no matter how many clothes you put on, mild confusion. And what happened was Alan's partner felt so much of this that she decided to turn around. So even though we are smiling in this picture, a few seconds before this, we were hugging with tears. We agreed that we would have this as our last shot as we parted. And Alan decided that he would return with his girlfriend back to the town of Moshi, even though they had spent all of this time and effort to come all of this way. It was an act, a gesture of compassion that impressed me. And so I ended up climbing the rest of the way with the fellow in red there, a guy I just met, and our guide, whose name is Piggy for reasons that I don't understand. And this fellow in red, at one point in the hike, developed a very strange affliction. His face started to turn blue. The guides thought it was some tropical kind of illness, maybe an infection or something. We were all very concerned. We thought maybe he should return too, until we realized that his blue bandana was leaking. Strange perceptions. I think there are only 3 things I have seen in all of my travels that so impressed me immediately with a sense of numinous awe and wonder as that first sight of Kilimanjaro. The first would have been standing at the edge of creation in the Grand Canyon in Arizona. The second, seeing the world's largest living structure, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. And the third was rounding a corner in that city that is a temple to architecture, Barcelona, and seeing Gaudi's masterpiece, the ridiculous, the exuberant La Sagrada Familia. Kilimanjaro had that effect on me. It was impressive. And you walk on this mountain for about 9 to 10 hours a day, and by day 3 and day 4, you forget that you're on a mountain. My perception started to alter in 3 distinct ways. My first observation was that I've been on a slope for 4 days, and I remembered that the world isn't in fact sloped. The second was that I am now persistently looking down at the sky. The clouds are below us. And the third happened at night. You come out into this grand open space. And there's no pollution, there's no light, there's no dust. You look up at the stars, and they don't twinkle. They don't twinkle because there's no atmospheric disruption. The astronauts made a similar observation. This is their true, eternal, untwinkling form. In the words of Rumi, no more words. In the name of this place we drink in with our breathing, stay quiet like a flower, so the night birds will start singing. Day 4 and day 5, no one talks. You walk, and your reality compresses to this: one step in front of another. In Swahili, our guides would say, pole, pole, slowly, slowly. Walking, breathing, listening. The mind still is a lake, reflecting the African sky. No cell phones, no television, no beeps, just things inside and outside that are eternal. Day 7, Mweka camp. Summit night. We wake up at 11 p.m. We have English biscuits and tea. The food on Kilimanjaro is terrible. We put on layers of clothing like astronauts preparing for a spacewalk, 3 coats, 3 pairs of socks, boots, gloves, goggles, caps, and you're still cold. That altitude sickness has never quite left. And I look up on this final day, and I see glowworms on the mountain. These are conga lines of hikers who have left before us. And all you see is blackness. You don't even see stars in one section of the sky because the summit is obliterating the stars. There is no light. It is just abyss. And so we start our own hike, about 10 of us, holding on to each other's shoulders because the wind is blowing snow into our face. The snow is horizontal. The temperature has dropped to -10. We can't see. I look down to the right, an abyss of 1,000 feet, and it's all scree, loose rock. If you fall, you will keep falling. And I imagine what someone in base camp would see. They would see a string, a pearl of lights, slowly inching its way up the mountain. And then one of them would break free. And it would flash a few times. That would be me tumbling. And who would come? I don't think anyone. You couldn't. It's too dark. It's too dangerous. And so I have a perception, an epiphany. This is a fine mess you've gotten yourself into. Or is it? Isn't this what you wanted? Isn't this the natural outcome of the past 3 years? All those mornings you woke up wishing you hadn't, and here it is before you. It's very easy. Just take one step to the right. It'll all be over. And what better a place for it to be all over? The altitude sickness has now become very apparent. I'm not thinking straight. I'm very cold. I'm very tired. I don't want to walk forward. Walking backwards is impossible. That's not the right way back, so you have to go up. And so I come to terms with my destiny. This is it. It'll happen in a minute or maybe an hour, but it will happen. And so I resign myself to that. And in that resignation, there's a kind of calmness. And I decide to simply review the best moments of my life. And yet there's that irrationality too, strange visions. I start to count backwards from 100 just to make sure I'm not going insane. And I can do it. And just when I finish, I see a roast chicken floating in front of me, followed by candied yam, corn on the cob. It's my mother's Christmas dinner. No, also not a bad way to end. And at this point, I wish I could tell you that Tania's face also came before me, and that she said to me, Keep going. Trust in yourself. But she didn't. She didn't come before me. And all that happened on that final night was that reality compressed to this. One foot in front of the other. Pole pole. An awareness of my breathing and my heart beating and my mind still as a lake. And soon, this. Sunrise over East Africa. Quietness, and the light returns. There are things inside of us and outside of us. A music that, if we just but listen, will help us through our suffering. A resilience that has always been there and always will be there, available to you. It was my epiphany, and it was an idea I thought worth spreading. Thank you.